The battle for European supremacy continues this weekend. And no, I'm not on about the Eurovision Song Contest. I'm on about Aston Villa and Tottenham Hotspur fighting out to see who will get into those European places come the end of the season. And hopefully it's Tottenham and not us that finish the weekend with nul point. This is Talk of the Trinity.
Hello and welcome to the latest edition of Talk of the Trinity podcast. In case you've forgotten who I am, after my leave of a couple of weeks, I am Baz Barrett, and I was expecting homecoming party parade from my co-host, Mr. Trinity himself, Will Forrest, but he is otherwise engaged, so it is just me for the first half of this podcast, but do not worry, you will be hearing the thoughts of Mr. Trinity later on. Thank you to friend of the show, David Scott of the Irish Lions, for ably filling in during my absence. Heard some rumours that he was much better received than me, but, you know, it's been a week. Bad news on the field, bad news off the field. I am here for the run-in for the rest of the season. And speaking of things that are also here during the run-in for the rest of the season, you can check out our Twitter page at Talk Trinity for all the latest news, previews, reviews, polls, absolutely everything about Aston Villa, and, well, maybe some things not quite about Aston Villa, but you'd have to go and have a look and see for yourself. You can also check out past episodes on our YouTube channel, Talk of the Trinity, or if you just like the dulcet tones of me, Will, and our many guests, you can check out our audio providers, Apple, Amazon, Spotify, Google. We are also on FanHub. And I alluded to some bad news on the field, and that is what greeted my return to these fair shores on Saturday just gone at Molineux, where Wolves beat Aston Villa by the solitary goal 1-0. And it was one of those games really whereby Wolves scored early, and they had a few counter-attacks in the second half, but realistically, for a team third lowest scorers in the Premier League, they were happy to sit back and allow Villa to try and break them down, which Villa were not able to do on this occasion, unfortunately. And the maybe nightmare is the wrong word, but the run against Wolves continues in terms of our last 5 visits to Molineux. Now Wolves have won 4, and our home record isn't much better either against Wolves. But leaving that aside, on the day, yeah, it was what you may call a football manager type performance in terms of majority of the possession. Villa 62%, 16 goal attempts, but those quality goal attempts were few and far between. Buendia forced a good save from the goal in the first half, and late chances at peppering the goal of Wolves, well, peppering the penalty box really, with crosses in the second half, but it just wasn't really one of Villa's days. And is that, you look at the possession, the shots, is that just a bad day at the office? Or is it a situation whereby teams have finally figured out how to play against Unai Emery's Aston Villa? Maybe the Newcastle performance, where nothing but praise for the Villa team there, made people sit up and take notice, and they've actually, realised that they have to do their homework on trying to stop Aston Villa. And Wolves as I mentioned, did that by really defending deep, allowing Villa to come onto them. And, we've sung the praises of Ollie Watkins during his goal scoring run of form, so we're not going to turn on him after a few games without a goal, but a couple of chances didn't find the net this time. Traore started, came off at half time for Leon Bailey, who didn't really do much himself, from what I can remember. But on the positives, even though the substitutions did not lead to a goal, it was good to see Diego Carlos coming back to play some minutes for the first time since he was injured way back in the early part of the season. So good to see him. And you'd think in terms of trying to get him up to speed, perhaps ahead of next season, where he will be challenging for a starting position. And Camara came on for a few minutes as well. Hopefully he will be available much quicker in terms of for the rest of the season, because he is a miss in that central midfield, even though John McGinn does admirably in that deeper role. You sense that if Camara was fit, McGinn would have played further up, probably where Traore started on that right-hand side. And Buendia, in terms of the centre, busy. Is he going to be at risk of his place in the team being taken by Coutinho? Coutinho was on the bench as well, didn't come on during the game. But yeah, it was busy. I'd say busy from Buendia. I mentioned that one shot aside. Your glass half full, saying he's getting the positions, glass half empty, not putting them away. But he's, certainly a trier. But in terms of Wolves, they've gone into a run of form in terms of home, 4 wins at home without conceding a goal. You'd think they were safe now for this season, and frustrating afternoon, you'd say, in terms of Villa just not being able to create enough quality to get a point, let alone 3 out of it. But there was maybe some doom and gloom after the full-time whistle. Well, you're clutching at some straws. It was slightly lifted by events on Monday at the MX Stadium, where Brighton unexpectedly got absolutely smashed at home by Everton 5-1. So that cuts the game in hand. They've got to 2. Obviously, they have to play Villa as well. But the team who are coming to Villa Park on Saturday currently are 1 place above Brighton in the league, in 6th place, because at time recording, Villa's last 3 games of the season are against teams in 5th, 6th, and 7th, with Villa in 8th. Spurs come to Villa Park. Hopefully not getting the train, because they're all on strike again on Saturday. But Spurs, who it's been, shall we say, from an outside perspective, a slightly crazy few months at Spurs. I mean, the Conte meltdown as it was, they were 3rd a couple of months ago. But the season, from their perspective of trying to qualify for the Champions League, looks like it's gone off the rails for them. It looks like European football will be of the Europa Liga or Conference League variety at best for Spurs. And yeah, a real mixed kind of bag in the last month or so in particular, beating Palace 1-0 at the weekend, penalty from Harry Kane. I mean, where would Spurs would be in a lot more of a state if they didn't have Harry Kane? Having previously lost 4-3 away at Liverpool the previous weekend, having been 3-0 down and equalised in injury time and still losing. Drew at home to Man United after being 2-0 down. And, well, we mentioned results where Newcastle have goals in them and they got 6 against Spurs, 5-0 up after 20 minutes, and they lost at home to Bournemouth. And they beat Brighton with a bit of help from VAR. So real mixed bag from Spurs. You really, apart from the aforementioned Harry Kane scoring goals, you really don't know what you're going to get from this Spurs team, staggering towards the end of the season in terms of whoever their next manager is going to be. Strange to say for a team, as I mentioned, who were third a couple of months ago, but it does have the look of a team who will need a rebuild if they are going to be threatening those Champions League places again next season. But that is the task that faces Aston Villa on Saturday. You have to say that they're all going to be the remaining 3 games of the season, but especially the 2 home games. They're going to be the biggest games of the season. This is the biggest game of the season for Villa. This is, you feel, having lost to Wolves on Saturday, they have to win, really, Villa, to keep their European hopes alive. And in terms of, they are 3 points behind Spurs. Time recording, Spurs goal difference +7, Villa's +3. So there is, if a couple of goals swing, could happen if Villa win. 2-0 win for Villa, if my math serves me correctly, will put the teams on equal goal difference, but Spurs would still be above on goals scored. And if Villa win by 3, then they will be above Spurs on goal difference. So, a real high stakes game. And mention the home crowd. That is going to be absolutely key for Villa. In terms of, we've mentioned, the Newcastle game, the crowd were really up for it kind of from the first minute and, well, attacking Newcastle from the first minute. It's going to have to be the same again. It's even going to, step up a notch, really, because, as we mentioned, Spurs got some very good players, but in different form. So Villa's record against Spurs at home is pretty poor in recent years. But if there's ever going to be a chance to get a result, this is probably the best circumstance you're going to get against Spurs based on, recent history. And in terms of how you expect Villa to line up, mentioned a few substitutes who came on against Wolves. If they're at time recording, team news has not been announced, but if they are trending in the right direction, those on the bench, you'd expect Camera to start, begin to push up to the right. Watkins, even though he hasn't hit the goal back of the net in the last few games, he's going to start. You got to ride that hand for the end of the season. But in terms of the rest of the team, I suspect will largely pick itself. I mean, Cash wasn't fit to play against Wolves. They're all big games now in terms of the rest of the season. Do you throw him in? Yeah, I think it depends on the fitness. I think if you can get 70 minutes out of him, you play him. If he's only fit, for a half, you leave him back for the following games and try and get him in for the last chance game against Brighton, where, you'd expect Villa would have to win if they are going to qualify for Europe, if that is still a possibility on the last day. But in terms of a prediction time, it's a real difficult one. Mentioned in terms of our record against Spurs isn't very good. Spurs do have Harry Kane. Defensively, they kept a clean sheet against Palace, but apart from that, recently defensively they have been unsteady. I think if you were being generous to them. Yeah, so it's a heart versus head moment here, because if the same Villa turns up as did against Newcastle, you'd expect Villa to win. But in terms of the confidence, may have been knocked a little bit over the last couple of weeks. Creativity may have been stifled. Spurs, even as bad defensively as they have been, the game plan is going to be to sit back and defend. I'm going to go for a score draw. I'm going to go. I'm tossing between 1-1 and 2-2, but I'm going to go 2-2 in terms of this one. I think there's going to be a roller coaster of emotions this afternoon, on the afternoon. And it just means we'll go to Liverpool and win. That's easy, right? But no, I'm going to go for 2-2. But if you're feeling that is the unwelcome or welcome return of negative Baz, and you want a bit more positivity, perhaps in terms of their predictions, then you are in the right place because I will pass you over to my co-host, Mr. Trinity himself, right now for his thoughts on Wolves and his predictions for Tottenham.
There you have it, thoughts and views of the adopted Egyptian prince, Baz Barrett. And Baz, yeah, it wasn't the welcome home party you expected, because we thought you preferred the negativity, or we thought you'd like to have something to moan about. So as you can tell, with Baz returning, that means that the loan spell of Dave Scott has ended, though Dave will be back on the show, hopefully before the end of the season, most definitely in the summer. And it probably wasn't the loan spell he'd have wanted. It wasn't the Robbie Keane loan spell where he came in and scored a couple of crackers against Wolves. It was more of one of those Vaclav Drobny type loan spells where things just didn't quite go to plan. However, we move on, we go forward. We had the disappointment of the defeat to Wolves, but when they got Totti playing for them, it's gonna be difficult. We created a couple of chances. Obviously, Mings put the one over the bar, being the best. But all in all, a 1-0 defeat, and we need to move on. That's all I'm going to say about Wolves. I don't want to talk about them anymore. They got the better of us at the moment. But this weekend, we look at Tottenham Hotspur, a Tottenham Hotspur side who, in their last 5 games, have lost 3-2 to Bournemouth. That breathtaking encounter where Bournemouth scored at the death. The 6-1 defeat away at Newcastle, 5-0 down very early on, and most supporters didn't see out the game. Tottenham 2, Man United 2, the great fight back where they showed the desire to give the fans something to cheer about. And then the 4-3 defeat to Liverpool, where fans again, I think, thought, oh no, not one of these days, when they were 3-0 down after 15 minutes. They obviously clawed it back to 3-3 before the late sucker punch following Lucas Moura's mistake. And then at the weekend, they managed to get a 1-0 win over a Crystal Palace side who were gunning for 20 points from their remaining 8 games. When there were 8 games left, they've got a few games left now, and they're not too far off that 20-point target. If you know, you know. Anyway, Tottenham Hotspur there, not the greatest of runs really. 1 win, 1 draw, 3 defeats, 15 goals conceded in that time. They're averaging 3 goals against the game, though. Did keep a clean sheet out last time at home. Hugo Lloris, a long-standing servant of the club, is out. Fraser Forster has come in between the sticks, and I'm not sure he thought he'd be playing as much as he had done. It's a bit of a fall from grace for Hugo Lloris after playing for France at the World Cup, being in the World Cup final, to now finding himself out of the Tottenham team, whether that's injury or otherwise. It's one of those where you have to feel sorry for him, and it does feel like the writing's on the wall in regards to his Tottenham career. Though we've seen players come back from the brink of obscurity before. And Tottenham in the table are in 6th place, 17 wins, 6 draws, a whopping 12 defeats. Their 12 defeats are the 3rd highest in the top half. Only ourselves and Fulham have lost more, and our ones tended to be right at the start of the season. They got a goal difference of +7, and they're on 57 points, meaning that, well, We need a 4-goal swing. If we can beat them 2-0 at the weekend, then we'd obviously climb above them, which would be great going into the final stretch or the final 2 games of the season. But this Tottenham team, they're dangerous. They've got goals in them. Heung-min Son hasn't had the greatest of seasons. I know that he was tipped to be top goal scorer by someone, negative Baz, but he hasn't hit the heights that he would have liked. Harry Kane, though, does score and loves scoring goals. He's chasing down that Alan Shearer Premier League record, and we wonder whether he'll be at Tottenham come the end of the season. But whilst he is, so far this year, he's got 28 goals and 5 assists in all competitions. Heung-min Son, 14 and 5 assists in all competitions. Not too bad, really. Bentancur is then third with 6. Højbjerg has got 5, and then Richarlison has got 3. Now, without Kane and Son, they're not firing. Yes, they've got 15 players who have scored goals for them this season. But you take Kane out of that team and you worry for them, because Kulusevski, with injuries and form, hasn't been hitting the heights that they thought he would following his arrival last year. And before we get on to what we think will happen with us versus Tottenham, they've got Brentford at home next week, and 12:30 kick-off on the Saturday. Going to be a big game for them, especially with it being a London derby as well, and with Brentford still harbouring hopes of finishing as high up in the league as they can. And then the last day of the season, the 28th of May, at 4:30, it's Leeds United away, and Leeds, who are currently struggling at the bottom of the Premier League, will have it all to play for as well. Now, that brings us on to the Villa, and whilst we haven't had the greatest results in the last 2 weeks, we have been a form team, and where Tottenham have struggled for goals, so have we. Watkins has 15 in all competitions. Our second top scorer is Danny Ings with 7. 147 minutes per goal for him before sending him to West Ham. And then third is, and the players who are still here, Dougie Luiz, Buendia and Bailey, all with 5 goals each. And the best goals per minute ratio between them is Leon Bailey, 387 minutes per goal, but that's a long way off Ollie Watkins, and there is that over-reliance there on Ollie Watkins. We obviously know that we need to be looking for more creative players next year, and the links to Marco Asensio, Dybala, Vlahovic, Ferran Torres are great to see, but at the moment we've got to find goals to help keep our European dream alive. The flame is flickering. It's still there. If we can pour some petrol onto it this weekend, then you never know. We could be roaring into Europe, albeit the Conference League, but I'd most definitely take it. I've said it many times. That Conference League, whilst it can be seen as a chumps league, it's still Europe. It's still attracting a better quality of players. It's still more games. It's still a competition that you want to be winning and participating in. Ollie Watkins, of course, has been off the boil for the last few games, shall we say. He didn't score against Wolves, nor against Man United, nor against Fulham. We got 1 goal in the last 3 games, and that goal against Fulham was a well-worked set piece from Tyrone Mings' header following a John McGinn corner. Before that, it was the 1-1 draw with Brentford, where Dougie Luiz scored, so it's 4 games for Watkins. And the game prior to that was that fantastic 3-0 win over Newcastle United. Now, do I think that we're going to be as lacklustre as we have been the last few weeks with some players, dead on their feet, really, because of the lack of depth or options that we've had available? Or do I think that we'll be able to get back to those heady heights of the 10 games unbeaten run? Well, before I give you that answer, we do have some great news in that Diego Carlos returned to action last week against Wolves, made some lovely passes, some good aerial battles as well with the Wolves front line. It moved Concert to right back, which, yeah, a little bit surprising, but he's played there before. We've seen him play there before, and it's another option for Unai moving forward. Whether he wants to do it for a whole match or start that way, I don't know. But we've seen that Matty Cash is back in training. Boubacar Kamara is back. He came on last week. Philippe Coutinho is back. He made the bench last week. Leon Bailey's back. He came on. We've also obviously got Bertrand Traore, who's been buzzing around the first team. Got his first start against Wolves and was hooked at half time for Bailey. But with the addition of those, we're going to say five because Bertie's been there for a few weeks now. With the addition of the other five players coming back into the fold, it suddenly gives us a refresh that we've most definitely needed. And we've needed it really since the 1-0 win against Fulham, if not the 1-1 draw with Brentford. We set our standards for the season with the 3-0 demolition of Newcastle United. And we need to try to get back to that. And with only one game a week for the remaining 3 games of the season, hopefully it'll be easier for us to do so without having midweek games thrown in there as well to tire us out. With the players that we've got returning, I would like to see some of those back into the starting lineup. So for this weekend, for me, Emi Martinez starts in goal. I'd be looking to bring Matty Cash in because he'll be able to get forward. He's got the energy to get back as well. And even if it's only for 60 minutes and then you need to close it out with Concert Chambers or Younger right back, that's fine. You have Concert and Mings at centre back. They played together the longest over the course of the season because of Diego Carlos's injury. So there's no point really in throwing him in at the moment. I'd rather us keep Concert and Mings there, get them playing as they have been. We've got that solid foundation in front of Martinez. Don't forget, we kept a lot of clean sheets recently with those two at the back. So keep them there. And then have Alex Moreno at left back. Yes, Moreno has looked a bit tired. Teams have probably figured out that he's one of our main attacking outlets. And as well as Luca Dean has done when he's come on, he would also want to push, as will Cash. But I think Alex Moreno gets down there, goes at Pedro Porro, goes at whoever is on that right-hand side as well, Kulishevsky, for example, and we have a battle, and they have a battle on their hands. 2 central midfielders. Well, with the return of Booba, it would be no surprise for you to see that I would put him in and have Douglas Luiz alongside him. Douglas Luiz has been immense this season, considering that he wasn't even in the first team for a number of weeks, a number of months at the start of the season, despite scoring a high number of corners. Boubacar Kamara also offers that defensive stability for Dougie to roam forward and also for the fullbacks to push on so that he can sit just in front of that back two and mop anything up and even drop into a back three where needed. John McGinn has been fantastic for us and has really rediscovered his best form. Some of his form, you could even argue, has been his best in a Villa shirt. And he's taking games by the scruff of the neck. He has to come in or play on the right of midfield for me. And on the left of midfield, with the Tottenham defence being the way that it is, it's a toss-up between 3 players. Buendia and Coutinho could be put in there. They could also be put in higher up into those forward positions. However, I'm going to go with Jacob Ramsey. Jacob Ramsey to drive at them, to cut inside, to play the ball through to Marino, to receive it back with those late runs into the penalty area and those top corner finishes. He could be a key asset for us against Tottenham. The front two, Ollie Watkins, obviously, they're going to be so preoccupied with him. But if he gets a sniff, if he gets the chance, hopefully he won't have had too many sleepless nights. And he'll be able to stick the ball into the back of the net and celebrate in style, because he's been unplayable for a large part of this calendar year and has been knocking on the door of an England recall. Alongside him, I could have gone with Buendia or Coutinho just to drop to create for them, but instead, I think we need to put pressure on this back line and we need people who will run with the ball. So Leon Bailey comes in for me up front for exactly that, being able to get onto the ball and run at that Tottenham back line. Now, that would be my 4-4-2. It'd be great to hear what your Villa team would be. But looking at Tottenham and looking at their danger men and who to watch out for, well, it's very easy to say that Harry Kane is the danger man. Incredibly easy. He scores goals for fun. I'm going to go with Heung-min Son because he is picking up form. He's caused us problems before with his direct running, with his dropping inside, with his link-up play with Harry Kane. And whoever's on that right-hand side of defence, whether it's Cash or Young, they are going to need to be switched on. They're going to have to make sure that they're able to nullify that threat of Son and not allow him to get the left wing backs involved in the game either. So that's the Tottenham key man. And funnily enough, I think our key man will be somebody coming in off the left as well. And that will be Jacob Ramsey. I could very easily have gone for Leon Bailey, but I think with Jacob Ramsey, if he can cut in, if he can drive forward, ask questions of that Tottenham defence and allow Watkins to pull away from the centre backs or even create space for Ramsey, like he did against Newcastle. And Bailey does the same as well by pulling them and running them ragged. Then Ramsey will be able to free up areas of the pitch for those two and for Alex Moreno to get forward and to hurt that Tottenham back line. Tottenham, they ship goals. They do tend to ship goals. And if we can be relentless with the pressure that we put on, especially with having these players back from injury in creative sparks there, then there's no reason why we can't record a win come the weekend. I do feel that the performance will be more akin to that of the Newcastle home game. I'm incredibly confident. I think we're going to have the high energy. The crowd will get behind the team and it will start lightning quick. I do see Tottenham grabbing a goal, but I'm not going to go for the 2-2 score draw that Baz said. I will go for the same amount of goals. I'm going to go Aston Villa 3, Tottenham Hotspur 1. And I think it will help us then to keep putting pressure onto those teams around us, especially going into the final set of fixtures where we've got Liverpool away and Brighton at home. It'll boost us enough to be able to go to those games feeling confident that we can get the wins or that we can get points. And it's really wins that we need at the moment. But we'd love to hear your thoughts in regards to what you think the score will be. Am I being ridiculous? Are you more akin to negative Baz? Are you one of those party poppers, party poppers, party poopers, party poppers, party poopers, whatever you want to be? Okay? Let us know what you believe the score will be. Who do you think the key players will be for Spurs and for the Villa going into this weekend? Be sure to keep listening over the coming weeks. We're going to have our end of season review coming up shortly, and we hope to have some special guests on for that, depending on their commitments. Some of the some of the more well-known faces that we've had on the show, though we have also been chatting to a couple of other people about them coming on at some point. We'll also be having a bit of fantasy football over the summer. We'll be looking at having a £150 million Villa budget, looking at the transfer market website, and then comparing what our starting teams and subs benches would be going into the new season. And we'll be asking you to vote for your favourite. But until next time, cheers, Tar. Thank you very much to listening to us on all of our audio podcast providers. Thank you for watching us on YouTube. I hope you've enjoyed the picture of Senesalo this week. And if you're going down to the game, make sure that you're behind the boys. You're really, really raising the roof. You want to leave there with a sore throat. You want to leave with a sore throat. You know that you've got behind the lads because the lads need it at the moment. I'm sure they'll put on a performance for us. Now, Tottenham, the Cockerels, they'll be hoping for a cockfight. But let's hope that the Lions of Aston can just give them a good mauling. Until next time, he's Villa till he dies and he's back. Yay. I'm Villa till I die. Cheers, Tar. Thank you very much. Up the Villa.